Hello there, my very good friends. Andy Murray here for What Culture Wrestling, and today is the 1 year anniversary of one of the most brutal culls in WWE history. I am, of course, talking about Black Wednesday, the 15th of April 2020, when WWE, at the onset of a global health crisis, decided that it was going to either release or furlough dozens and dozens of wrestlers and backstage employees. Now, we've been over this before, I won't go into it in detail again, but decisively, WWE didn't need to do this in a record year of profits. That being said, they did. And while a bunch of the backstage staff members have since returned to the company, the wrestlers, for the most part, have moved on to other things. 1 year on from that, we're going to take a look at where those wrestlers landed. So let's just get stuck in. I'm Andy for What Culture Wrestling, and this is WWE's Black Wednesday releases. Where are they now, 1 year later? So I've labelled the first group of wrestlers here the Performance Center crew. Now that's not a pejorative, it's not an insult, it's nothing like that. It's not a comment on these people, their talent or anything else. It's just that before they left WWE, they were in very similar circumstances. None of them were really making TV. In fact, some of them hadn't even debuted at all. And since leaving WWE, well, there's no real record of them finding consistent roles in wrestling either. So I thought it would just be a good idea to bundle them all together. So that group of wrestlers is Alexander Yaksic, MJ Jenkins, Dorian Mack, Mars Wang, Edgar Lopez, Faisal Kurdi, Hussein Aldegal, Marco Gomez, Mohamed Fahim, Omari Palmer, Rocky, and Yi Beng. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this, slight exceptions. MJ Jenkins actually showed up on an AEW show shortly after her 90-day non-compete clause would have expired last year, but there's no record of her doing anything in pro wrestling after that. Although going by her social media account, she is looking for booking, so hopefully something works out for her. And Alexander Yaksic, he is active on the indie, well, semi-active on the indie scene. He worked a couple of dates last year as Zora Veste, but is yet to re-emerge. And now let's get into the meat of this list of wrestlers. Tino Sabatelli, right? I've put him here in his own dedicated entry because it's a really interesting story. The guy got released by WWE, big muscly dude, former NFL, probably rich as hell, and showed up in AEW for like one show, working as Sabi. He was on Dark, tag team match. He lost because that's what happens when you're a Dark enhancement talent. Now, around about this time, somebody from AEW, somebody working tapings, leaked that Eric Bischoff was going to be appearing on a show. Sabatelli never appeared on AEW television again. After this, Chris Jericho used his podcast to blast what he called an NXT reject for leaking the details, saying that this person would never effing be back in AEW. And speculative fingers immediately pointed at Sabatelli, who, a few months later, it was reported, was back training at the Performance Center. So, you know, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, guys, but I'm donning the tinfoil hat for this one. This just looks like a shower cap, or maybe I'm a dinner lady. Bad choice. And from Sabatelli, we move over to Cassiasono, who has not returned to the ring. He's turned down several offers. According to him, he's just waiting for the right opportunity. Probably just doesn't want to really travel around the world and compete in the middle of a bloody pandemic. He has, however, stayed active with his Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling podcast. It's part of the Ad-Free Shows network with Conrad Thompson. It's a really great listen. The Wrestling Genius nickname is more than just a nickname for Chris Hero. He's a really engaging talker, knows his stuff. If you are a proper wrestling dork like me, you should check it out. Hope to see him back though, the guy rules. So I'm gonna group another 3 wrestlers together here because it makes sense to do so. These people are Ty Conti, Nick Ogarelli, who's now Nick Comoroto in AEW, and Cesar Bononi. These are other people whose NXT usage rate was very sporadic. Conti was used a little bit more than the other two, but they weren't really doing a whole lot in NXT. They got cut, and all 3 have now landed in AEW. Comoroto is part of the new Factory heel stable. He was previously in the Nightmare Family, teaming now with QT Marshall, Anthony Ogogo, and Aaron Solo. Cesar Bononi, part of a group with Peter Avalon. Who else is in that group? I should know this. Ryan Nemeth and J.D. Drake, primarily working on Dark. Ty Conti's made one hell of an impact. She has improved a lot since coming through the doors of AEW. She is currently, at the time of recording, #1 in the women's division rankings as well. She's doing great, and she's really emerged as a top prospect in AEW. Deonna Purrazzo, she's killing it in Impact Wrestling. She debuted there in May 2020. She's now a two-time and current Knockouts champion. She's had great matches and feuds with the likes of Jordynne Grace, and at the end of 2020, she was named Impact Wrestling's Wrestler and Knockout of the Year. Really, one of the ones that got away for WWE. You look at what she's done since leaving and you think, how the hell could you let this person slip through your fingers? But Deonna's killing it, she's doing great, and she's probably very happy. Good for her, she rules. And speaking of ruling, Serena Deeb, she hadn't wrestled in years. She was under WWE contract, she was a trainer at the Performance Center, never stepping in the ring. She has left and become a vanguard in both the NWA and AEW. She is a pro's pro, a veteran of the game, several steps above most other people in the entire wrestling industry when it comes to skill, technique, knowledge, psychology, all kinds of stuff like that. She's currently injured, but she's going to be a big benefit to the AEW women's division for a long time, and she's still only 34 years old. It's crazy, but Serena Deeb's great, and she's doing great things once again. Kurt Hawkins, what about him? He's an Impact. Brian Myers, wrestling under his real name. He's faced everyone from Eddie Edwards and Tommy Dreamer to Hornswoggle since going over to Impact Wrestling. He's working this most professional wrestler gimmick. He's probably very satisfied. Gets to do some stuff with Matt Cardona, who they've got a podcast together. It's good stuff, doing business. Good on Brian. EC3, this guy has had a really interesting path since leaving WWE. He has reinvented himself, controlling his narrative as the essential character, and he returned to Impact, but he was only there for a cup of coffee after leaving WWE. Worked a program with Moose, cinematic match, departed, went to Ring of Honor a few months later, departed again, but he's now back in Ring of Honor. He has stamped his future down there. Recently worked a really good pay-per-view match with Jay Briscoe. The essential character stuff is very interesting as well. It's unlike anything else he's ever done in his career. Very creative guy, and he had a nightmare of a WWE run, so this is good stuff. Lio Rush, he hasn't actually signed to one of the bigger promotions yet. You haven't seen him in AEW, he hasn't signed to Impact, he hasn't gone to New Japan. Well, the Japanese version of New Japan, because he's been active on New Japan's USA show, Strong, competing in a number of matches, including a big one at the New Beginning in USA against El Phantasmo. He's also currently signed to MLW, where he holds the World Middleweight title, beating Myron Reed in January, and on top of that, he has the AAA World Cruiserweight Championship that he took from Laredo Kid around his waist as well. Leo seems like he's going to be this big, bad, traveling, touring wrestler when the world goes back to normal. He's going to be everywhere. It's really cool to see, because with the shrinking of the indie scene over the past few years, and particularly in the last year, we've kind of missed that. We've missed the guy who wrestles everywhere and just has kick-ass matches across the board. So this career path is really interesting and really cool for Lio Rush. Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows, the Good Brothers, AJ Styles' best mates, who AJ was really gutted when they left WWE, but these guys are crushing it. They're gonna go back to New Japan. That is inevitable when traveling becomes more of a possibility, but they're signed to Impact, they're former tag team champions, they're on AEW alongside Kenny Omega every single week, it seems. They're just everywhere. They're doing their Talking Shop shows again, their podcast. They are all over the place. Doc is running his Lariato Pro promotion. You cannot really ask for a better situation than what these dudes have landed in, so fair play to them. Drake Maverick, and this is where things get weird, because we still don't know if this was a work or if he was actually released. Drake released that teary-eyed video that tugged all of our heartstrings, of course. It was crushing. The guy seemed genuinely devastated to have been let go from WWE. But then he was back on TV a few weeks later. He was part of the Cruiserweight title tournament. He was told that if you win this, you will keep your job. He was fighting for his career. And he didn't win the tournament, but he got his contract back, and he's still on NXT today, tag teaming with Killian Dane. Still there, still got his job. That's good stuff. But you know, if you're working a storyline at this time when people you've actually let go are genuinely suffering, and you're using that to try and build fake sympathy for a guy who might have fake cried in that video, it's gross, it sucks, and I hate that. Eric Young, killing it. Well, kind of was, the poor guy. Man, this sucks. So Eric Young re-debuted in Impact Wrestling at Slammiversary 2020, immediately thrust into the main event spotlight. He won the World Championship, he held it for a couple of months, dropped it in a great match to Rich Swann, formed the Violent by Design stable. Good stuff, Eric's crushing it. But unfortunately, he's just torn his ACL. He's going to be out for 6 to 9 months. It's the first major injury of his career. We wish him well in his recovery, and we're sure that when he returns, he'll be doing great things again, because his post-WWE run so far has been a big success. And joining him in Impact Wrestling is Heath Slater, or just Heath now, as he goes. He came into AEW. No, he didn't. He came into Impact Wrestling, same time, Slammiversary, debuting opposite Rohit Raju. He worked a free agent storyline similar to the one he did in WWE in 2016. He even found himself tag teaming with Rhino once more, but he's been out of the scene for a while now. He actually underwent surgery in March for some lingering injury problems that have been plaguing him for a while. He's gonna be off screen, but it looks like he's got a solid future ahead of him in Impact. Aiden English, now going by his real name Matthew Raywalt, he is yet to really properly re-emerge in pro wrestling. Now, he's done a few indie dates here and there, but it looks like primarily his energy is being focused on things like his Twitch account, his YouTube account. He runs Wrestling with Whiskey, which allows him to combine both of his passions together. Going by his social media, he seems really happy and just happy in general, so good for him. Maybe he doesn't want to come back to pro wrestling in a major role again. Maybe he's content doing the stuff he's doing right now, and you can't really ask for more than that level of contentness. Eric Rowan, Eric Redbeard, Rowan, Redbeard, Beard Red, Eric. All right, remember that piece of commentary from the Brody Lee tribute show? That appearance was one of the most touching things I've seen in wrestling in a long time. That AEW cameo in December, paying tribute to his dearly departed brother-in-arms, his former tag team partner, Brody Lee, aka Luke Harper. Rest in peace, Brody, dearly missed by everyone, especially guys like Rowan. He hasn't really re-emerged. He hasn't signed anywhere in pro wrestling. He's done some indie spots here and there. He's currently calling out Walter for a match for the NXT UK Championship, which would be fun. He's probably the biggest name left on the free agency board after all of this. So here's hoping something works out for him in the future. Here's hoping he gets signed somewhere, because he's a big dude, and by all accounts, he is a very lovely man as well. And how about the Colognes, Primo and Epico? They haven't done much. To kind of keep it short. A bunch of indie dates here and there. They haven't signed anywhere. They haven't showed up on anyone's TV show. They're probably just laying low, taking it easy. They'll probably have a few suitors coming for them when things open up a little bit more. So we'll just have to see how things work out in the long run for Primo and Epico. Sarah Logan, she hasn't actually wrestled since leaving WWE. In fact, she announced shortly after leaving WWE that she'd be taking some time off from the Squared Circle. Why? Why would she do such a thing, you might ask? Well, in February, her and her husband, Eric of the Viking Raiders, welcomed their first son, forgotten his name, Raymond Cash Rowe. What a badass name that is. They welcomed their first son to the world a couple of months ago, living happily, living healthily, out in the country, taking it easy, smiles on the faces on social media. You genuinely love to see it. Mike and Maria Bennett / Kanellis / Bennett Kanellis. They are back in Ring of Honor, both of them at the same time. It's good stuff. It's the promotion, of course, where Mike first made his name. They actually asked for their WWE releases several times before actually being let go, so it's safe to say they're probably a lot happier today than they were back then. Zack Ryder, or Matt Cardona. It's been a pretty interesting journey for this dude. He was in AEW for a cup of coffee, 5-show deal that concluded at All Out 2020 last year. He hosts the Major Wrestling Figure podcast with his best mate, Brian Myers. And now he's in Impact with Brian Myers, making an impact. I hate myself, but that's where he is, doing good stuff, massive following, nice, happy, shiny, infectious personality kind of guy. It's good stuff. No way, Jose. He announced that shortly after his WWE release, he'd be going back to wrestling as Levy Valens, but he hasn't done a whole lot. He hasn't worked a whole lot of dates, but that might be because he is currently expecting his first child as well. He announced this on social media in March. Congratulations to him, and all the best for the future. And we have saved the biggest name to be released on Black Wednesday until last. Rusev Miro. He's in AEW. He's been there since September. It's safe to say that his run hasn't really panned out the way a lot of people would have hoped. There's been some criticism thrown that way, and I think the criticism is kind of earned. Wrestling is subjective, and there's a lot about his run. You know, he's been teaming with Kip Sabian, feuding with Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends over video games. That lasted for 6 months. There's a lot about that that doesn't mesh with people's expectations, but the guy says he's very happy. He seems very happy as well. He's killing it on Twitch. He's got a big following over there, doing bits and pieces outside of pro wrestling, making an impact in different lanes, expanding his portfolio. You might not like the material that's coming from him on television, but look, he's gonna kill Kip Sabian at some point. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be cool. We're probably gonna get some kind of monster run out of him. That'll all work out in the end, but what matters most is the guy himself. And he's very, very happy. So that's it, guys. The rundown is through. We have covered every single wrestler released by WWE on Black Wednesday and where they are today. Let us know down in the comment section what you think of their post-WWE run so far. What have you liked? What have you disliked? Any areas of improvement? That kind of stuff. Once you've done that, you can like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Then follow us at What Culture WWE on Twitter and myself at Andy H. Murray, where you can tell me how wrong I am now. Piss off.